All right, guys. This is, revision. I think we're on 4 now of the battery-powered PC, and this is fresh off the printer. You can probably still hear it cracking. Kind of satisfying, but anyway, this is printed out of ABS, just like all the other parts for this thing. This is revision 3 of it, and this is the old battery case that I had printed previously. But the one thing I didn't like about it was I didn't like that if these little tabs broke, I had to reprint the whole thing. So basically, I just made it a little bit different this time so that if one of those tabs does happen to break, like that one did over there, then I would be able to fix it. So I'm going to actually have those laser cut out of aluminum, and they should never break from now on, basically. But the problem with this was I had to print it vertically in order for this to be printed without supports as much. And these being printed vertically just, obviously aren't that strong without infill. With infill. But having it printed this way, I could at least print these in the correct orientation for strength, but eventually I'm just going to laser cut them out of aluminum anyway. But here's the parts. So this is the motherboard, and I put a Noctua cooler on it and some nice DDR5. I think this is 32 gigs. 16 gigs each. Dual channel, and then my M.2 is underneath this. This is a multi-tier thing, but mainly I went with this motherboard because it has Thunderbolt support, which is something I really wanted. And this is also a Intel i5 is what this has. And then the GPU that I'm using is actually a 3050. And I really liked this just because the price was cheap at the time, and it's a single fan design card, which is what I needed. And I just took the fan shroud off of this, and I have a low pro fan that I basically screw into the side panels for this computer, which are right here. And I need to blow these off. I already blew all this off. I need to really integrate some dust filters into this for this revision, but that's a problem for another time. But anyway, yes, I know if I had printed this with hexagons, I wouldn't have needed support at all. I probably didn't really need it here anyway, but I really liked the look of the circles. One thing I didn't like about this design was that wave pattern looked cool, but honestly, I think that just a flat, solid front panel is just fine because of how much airflow there is from the sides and out the top. So in my opinion, it's going to work just fine. And I obviously don't need any power supply fan or anything like that because it is battery powered. So this is the new battery box, and this is just an XT90 connector. And then I have one that goes inside the case right here. And there will be basically the female end of this embedded into this right here. You can actually see what it looks like. You can just take that support material off, but this goes in just like that, nice and perfect. And that is how this whole thing gets power. So that just is gonna interface with that right there. But anyway, the biggest thing I wanted to talk about today is actually about these little power converter boxes. So these are DC to DC voltage step down boxes, basically. This is the one that has been in this computer for 2 years at this point, and it has worked, but every so often I'll get a game that crashes or something like that, and I'm curious if it's because it's drawing so much power through this that the voltage is dropping and causing the blue screen. So I bought a slightly bigger version, and then I bought a big version, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to fit these inside the case, but I really want to try this one at the very least and see if I can get this to work with the computer, and maybe even this one, and just run this without a fan on it, because this little guy did get pretty warm, because I don't think it's really supposed to be pushing the kind of current that I am pushing through it. At some times the computer draws, you know, maybe 150 watts, which really isn't that much. But something like this is rated for 400 watts, so it should never even get hot. And it should hold up to the current pull a little bit better. But anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of experimenting with these three and decide which one I'm going to go with. But for any of you that wanted to see how this whole thing goes together, I will be showing you that. So to get this motherboard in, it's actually really easy, because I screw the motherboard into this specially designed plate that I made, and the whole thing just slides right in. So you can actually get the motherboard onto this first, and then this stiffens up the whole case from the inside with the motherboard on it. So that just allows you to, you know, put the heat sink on and the RAM and all that stuff on the bench, and you can even plug fans in, things like that if you want to, and just drop it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and take all the support material off. And then also on the back of this, those two posts are for my GPU riser, because I mount the GPU on this side of this motherboard tray. So that's how it works. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started on this, and hopefully this can give you guys some inspiration on things that you can do. This is kind of one of those weird projects, but I really enjoy it, just because I love to have the power of a desktop that is run by a battery. Lithium battery technology is just so good these days that you can get by with doing a lot with them. But okay, now I'm going to get this case ready for all of the hardware that's going to go into it. So if you'll notice on the corners here, I have little holes for the 3D printed brass inserts. So I'm gonna melt all of those in. And then these guys here are M6 for the battery. And then I also have to install this little power button switch guy, and then I also need to put some M6 inserts in here for the handle, which I have already printed. Looks like that. So that's what I got to do next, and then also I'll be double checking all of my other parts and making sure that everything is as it should be. there you go. I got that all mounted up, and it does indeed snap right in. So that will be pressed on and then held in by these tabs on the side as well. It does look like it needs to go down just a little more, but with the weight of everything in here, it should definitely be a nice, tight, secure hold. So anyway, next thing is I'm going to get the motherboard mounted up and start to work on all the cable management, which on this is pretty easy. There we go, look at that, like a glove. So now all I gotta do is put in all of these little guys, and these are just a bunch of M3 by 20 screws, and it is a little bit easier if you can kind of see inside of here in order to line this up. There we are. Tighten the rest of these up. And really, this doesn't have to be, you know, crazy tight. There is still a little bit of a gap in here, so those screws aren't completely pulled up against this, but with how long they are, it's plenty sturdy for a little motherboard like this. But anyway, if you felt like it, you could put some Loctite on them. I'm not going to, because I'm in and out of here enough that I don't need to. But as you can see, this is a very tight fit. So this whole thing fits in here, and just look at how closely that lines up with the edge of this front panel where that's going to be going. So it's a pretty tight fit, but it all does fit in there. And if you wanted to run an external power supply, this would actually be a very small form factor PC just to run with a power brick, like a lot of people do. But anyway, I have ran this with just a power brick before, but it seems like the power brick I have can't quite hold up to gaming, so I would need something that was a little bit higher wattage or was able to handle, you know, the power drawing quickly and pulling in quickly. Like a 3D printer power supply even would work just fine for it, just because it's supplying constant wattage. But the lithium charger that I have, I can run this off of that, and it does 15 amps, so it's like 240 watts or something. But the problem is I think that the way it works, it doesn't ramp that power in fast enough for this. So anyway, next up I'm gonna just kind of do cable management and mount the power button and all of that good stuff. All right, now I'm going to feed the riser underneath the motherboard right here. All right, got the riser fed through, and then I will just go ahead and connect it in right here. There we are. Got that all nice and snug. And then if we go around to the other side here, let me put this somewhere where it won't get smashed. Then what we're gonna do is put this riser and screw it in. That GPU is in there, and then obviously for these, I'll need to screw these in as well. I'm going to do that later because it is still plenty strong just as it is, just with that riser actually. So anyway, that is the basics of it all mounted up. Now I just need to put the fan on, plug in the fans, do the power supply, and get everything else, you know, bolted in here. This clips in right here, but I won't bore you with all of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of wrap things up here, plug this in, solder it up, and that's about it. Right, I have this thing all put back together, and this is the middle voltage converter size. I determined that this one will not fit, and obviously this is the one I was using before, so we're going to try this, and I ended up having to like wire this fan on, so don't judge me for that. I need to get some small zip ties to get this on, or just screw it into my little side panel. I also just tossed some screws into here real quick. Also need a better solution for that, but anyway, this is how it all came together. The wiring management is not awesome, but it does work. And obviously, like, I need to clean up this little connector here so that this wire is all covered up and all that. But everything's plugged in and put together, so we will see if this makes any difference. I also want to measure the boot drop as I mean the voltage drop as this is booting, just because I'm curious what that will be. So let's go ahead and switch this on, and I'm just going to leave this on normally. But anyway, that's how you turn this voltage regulator thing on. So let me get this guy plugged into power. And I mean, not power. Ha! It is plugged into power. Let me get it plugged into my display so that we can see what is going on here. Plug in the keyboard as well. So there we go. And the fan is spinning, so that's a good sign. Now let's go see if the monitor turns on, which it very well should. There we go, booting right up. So I already know from before I got this all hooked back up that it was reading pretty much exactly on the nose 12 volts. It was like maybe a tiny bit over. But let's find out what we're reading now. 11.98. So with the Windows running, oh, there we go, 12.03. So that's probably just a variation in this multimeter, but anyway, I'm pretty happy with that. So the real trick will be to see what it does when I'm gaming. But I'm going to put the side panels on this thing and get it all finished up. But came out a little bit nicer this time. I did actually, if you can believe it, manage the wires better this time than I did the time before. But anyway, so this little power supply is a real tight fit in here, and I'm actually using these wires kind of to like push it back so it's not touching the RAM as much. But I mean, this is 20 pounds of crap in a 2-pound bag, as you can tell, so it is what it is. But so far it is looking really good, so let's find out how it performs. All right, I got the side panels on, and I did have to get rid of a couple of these little M2 screws that hold this lid on, just because they were in the way of the side panel. But really, these M6 ones hold it down anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much unless I take the computer away from the battery. But anyway, so this is probably the most graphically intensive game that I have. It's only running at 40 FPS just because I haven't played with the settings or anything. But anyway, you can see that the GPU up in the top is at 100%, the CPU is at 70%, and I guess when we're not moving, we're getting 70 FPS, which I think I have my VSync set to 70 anyway, 75, I guess. Oh, there we go. Now it's actually staying up there around 60 FPS for some reason. Anyway, so that is the computer, and we are currently drawing 180 watts playing this game. And I'll kind of move around a little bit and do some stuff, but it pretty much stays right about there. 180 is kind of the peak that I'm seeing. But I have been able to optimize this before and get it all the way down to like 140 watts peak pretty much. And that gives me a lot of playtime. But anyway, this is a 40 amp hour pack, and in the past I've been able to get about 6 hours of solid playtime just like this. And actually powering the monitor as well, since this does have Thunderbolt, I have ran a monitor off of this computer as well with the same battery. So kind of a fun little, project, but yeah, we're pulling about 12 amps. So, and I have a charger that will do 15. I can charge and play at the same time. Obviously, that's not ideal for batteries, but the way that this BMS works, it tries to get the power from the charger first before the battery, which is kind of neat. But anyway, so looks stable to me. I think I might just switch to this one without any fans, because it's going to definitely run a lot cooler than that little one that I had before, and I'm hoping it's more stable. I only had problems with it every once in a great while, but I've been wanting to redesign this case anyway, so pretty happy with how it came out. But let me know what you guys think. Should I install SteamOS on this next and see if it gives me an improvement in power performance, or if it's just plain smoother or anything like that? But go ahead and let me know in the comment section.